The crystal stemware trembled as Marcus Thornwood's hand reached for his water glass. 47 years of clawing his way to the top. Yet tonight, in this dimly lit corner booth at Bellissimo, every instinct he'd honed through decades of cutthroat deals screamed that something was catastrophically wrong. The mahogany walls seemed to constrict around him like a vice, suffocating him with their false warmth. The piano music that usually soothed his frayed nerves now felt like a funeral dirge, each note echoing the frantic pounding of his heart. He'd chosen this restaurant precisely because it promised invisibility, a sanctuary where titans of industry could orchestrate their empires without the world watching. But as the young waitress approached, her footsteps hesitant and uneven, Marcus felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that preceded every hostile takeover, every boardroom ambush he'd survived. Her name tag read, Sophia. Her olive-toned hands trembled violently as she set down his appetizer, nearly dropping the plate. Her eyes, God, her eyes, were pools of barely contained terror, darting between him and the two men in tailored suits who'd slithered in moments after his arrival. When she leaned forward to pour his water, she pressed something small and desperate against his palm with such urgency it felt like a last confession. A folded napkin. Have you ever sensed danger before it struck? Would you trust a stranger's warning? Tell us in the comments. Where are you watching from tonight? Marcus Thornwood had amassed $13 billion by reading the microscopic tells in people's faces, by sensing deception before it could destroy him. That same radar now shrieked like a fire alarm as he unfolded the napkin beneath the table with fingers that had suddenly forgotten how to stay steady. The handwriting was frantic, almost violent in its urgency. You're in a trap. Don't move. I'm Sophia. Trust me, please. His chest constricted. The room tilted. 47 years of surviving assassination attempts, corporate espionage, and family betrayals that would make Shakespeare weep, yet nothing had prepared him for the raw terror of this moment. He forced himself to look up at Sophia, who now stood across the dining room taking orders from an oblivious elderly couple. Her professional smile was a masterclass in deception, but he could see the tremor in her jaw, the way her shoulders hunched as if bracing for a blow. The two men at the bar swirled their whiskeys with practiced nonchalance, occasionally glancing at their phones. To anyone else, they were just successful executives decompressing. But Sophia's warning had ripped away that illusion, exposing them for what they truly were, predators circling their prey. Marcus had received death threats before, hundreds of them. Anonymous letters promising to gut his family, social media posts detailing exactly how they'd make him suffer. But Bellissimo had always been his fortress, his one space where Alessandro, the owner, greeted him like a brother and the staff remembered how he took his coffee. Now that sanctuary had become a tomb. Sophia returned, her voice artificially bright as she inquired about his meal. Everything to your satisfaction, Mr. Thornwood? But her eyes betrayed her. They were screaming, begging him to understand. She placed his entree down with surgical precision, then leaned in so close he could smell the fear on her breath. My manager's in on it. They've been orchestrating this for months. There's a black sedan in the alley. They're going to drag you into it. The words detonated in his mind like grenades. His security team sat outside, useless, entirely unprepared for betrayal from within. Marcus had weathered hostile takeovers that destroyed lesser men, had crushed competitors who'd sworn to annihilate him, had survived a brother's attempt to poison him for inheritance. But this woman, this complete stranger, was gambling her life to save his. He studied her as she moved around his table with choreographed efficiency. Sophia couldn't have been older than 32, but her hands bore the calluses of someone who'd fought for every dollar, every scrap of dignity. Her eyes held the haunted quality of someone who'd witnessed horrors but refused to become one of the silent witnesses. The men at the bar rose simultaneously. One headed toward the restroom with military precision while the other intercepted the hostess near the entrance. Sophia caught the movement and her entire body went rigid with fear so palpable Marcus could feel it. She scribbled frantically on her order pad and thrust it beside his plate before practically running toward the kitchen. Back exit is clear. Wait for my signal. I'm not letting them take you. Marcus forced himself to cut another piece of filet mignon, his hands surprisingly steady despite the hurricane raging inside his chest. Through the kitchen's porthole windows, he glimpsed Sophia in heated discussion with someone, her gestures wild, desperate. The man from the bar had cornered the hostess, their casual conversation belied by the predatory tension in his stance. Marcus's combat training activated automatically, cataloging exits, improvised weapons, calculating how many innocent people would die if this powder keg exploded. Sophia emerged carrying a dessert tray, but her trajectory brought her past his table. She paused to adjust his napkin, and he felt her entire body shaking. "They poisoned your wine," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I switched it with grape juice when you looked away. I watched them do it. They were laughing about how easy this would be." Ice flooded his veins. He'd taken maybe 2 sips, trusting Bellissimo's sommelier as he had for 15 years. How deep did this conspiracy burrow? How many people he'd trusted were complicit in his murder? His phone vibrated. A text from his head of security, all quiet. "Enjoy your evening, sir." The irony was so bitter Marcus wanted to vomit. His $1 million security apparatus was worthless while a minimum-wage waitress had literally saved his life. Sophia set tiramisu before him, and he noticed her hands had stopped shaking, as if saving him had crystallized her fear into pure determination. Why? The word escaped him like a prayer. Why risk everything for me? Her mask cracked, revealing something raw and beautiful beneath. "Because 3 years ago, I watched my younger brother bleed out on a convenience store floor while customers stepped over him to pay for their groceries." Tears glittered in her eyes but didn't fall. "I swore on his grave I'd never be one of those people who just lets evil win." The words shattered something in Marcus's chest, some calcified armor he'd worn for decades. The man from the bar reappeared near the kitchen entrance, checking his watch with predatory impatience. Sophia saw him too, and her jaw set with warrior-like resolve. She picked up the dessert menu, her voice urgent beneath its casual tone. "When I drop this tray, you run. Don't look back. Don't be a hero. Just run." Marcus nodded, every muscle coiled like a spring, 30 feet between him and freedom with only Sophia's courage standing guard. The tray trembled in her hands as footsteps approached from behind. The crash exploded through Bellissimo like a bomb. Sophia had accidentally collided with a busboy, sending desserts and china erupting across the floor in a catastrophic symphony. In the chaos of servers scrambling and diners gawking, Marcus bolted from his booth, moving with the speed of a man who understood this was life or death. His heart threatened to burst through his ribs as he heard the shout behind him. The kidnappers realizing their quarry was escaping. The alley door exploded outward under his weight. Cool night air hit his face like baptismal water, like resurrection. Freedom lasted exactly 4 seconds. Then Sophia screamed. Not a startled yelp or frightened gasp. A scream of pure agony that tore through the night and seized Marcus's soul with iron claws. His feet stopped moving. Every survival instinct, every evolutionary imperative shrieked at him to run, to let someone else handle this nightmare. But that scream, filled with pain and terror and the sound of someone paying the ultimate price for kindness, rooted him to the concrete like chains. She'd saved him. This stranger had gambled her life on his. And now she was dying for that choice. Marcus thought of his own daughter, Emma, barely older than Sophia, and how he'd want someone, anyone, to help her if she faced this horror. The choice crystallized with terrible clarity. He yanked out his phone, speed-dialed security. "Code black at Bellissimo. Send everyone. Now." His voice cracked with desperation he hadn't felt in 30 years. Then he did something that would haunt his security team for years. He charged back inside. The restaurant had transformed into a war zone. Customers were being herded toward the front exit like cattle while staff huddled by the kitchen in frozen terror. Marcus spotted Sophia on the floor beside the overturned dessert cart, one of the men standing over her while the other shouted at the cowering manager. Her uniform was torn, exposing bruises already forming. Blood ran from her split lip and nose, painting her white collar crimson. But her eyes, God, her eyes, blazed with defiance that would have brought empires to their knees. "Let her go." Marcus's roar filled the dining room, every ounce of boardroom authority weaponized into those 3 words. The man holding Sophia looked up, surprise morphing into predatory satisfaction. Mr. Thornwood. His accent was Eastern European, each syllable dripping with menace. How noble of you to return. Your waitress has been remarkably uncooperative. Sophia caught Marcus's eye and shook her head violently, blood spraying from her mouth, desperately trying to warn him away even as she suffered. In that moment, Marcus understood what true courage meant. Not the absence of fear, but choosing righteousness despite terror threatening to destroy you. This woman had more integrity than he'd accumulated in 47 years. Have you ever faced something like this? Let us know in the comments. The standoff lasted heartbeats before the front windows detonated inward. Marcus's security team moved like divine vengeance, black-clad angels of violence flowing through every entrance with lethal precision. The man holding Sophia spun toward the chaos, his grip loosening just enough for her to wrench away and scramble behind the overturned table. Federal agents. Everyone down. But these kidnappers were professionals. The one near Sophia pulled a weapon while his partner dove for cover behind the bar. Marcus threw himself forward, tackling Sophia and covering her body with his own as gunfire erupted, a thunderous apocalypse of muzzle flashes and shattering glass. The firefight lasted 30 seconds but felt like an eternity in hell. When silence finally descended like a shroud, Marcus raised his head to find Sophia staring at him with eyes wide as planets, glistening with tears. "You came back," she whispered, her voice shredded by emotion and disbelief. "You actually came back for me. After I saved you, you came back." "You saved my life first," Marcus replied, his own voice thick with feelings he'd buried for decades. He helped her to her feet as paramedics rushed in, keeping a protective hand on her arm as she swayed. "Are you badly hurt?" Sophia touched her split lip with trembling fingers. "Nothing that won't heal." She surveyed the destruction, overturned tables, shattered glass, chalk outlines where the kidnappers had fallen. Tears finally spilled down her cheeks. I couldn't let them hurt you. When my brother died, everyone just watched. They stood there with their phones, recording, and let him bleed." Her voice broke completely. "I swore I'd never be one of those people. I swore I'd matter." Something cracked open in Marcus's chest, a warmth he'd thought extinct after decades of cutthroat capitalism. This woman had shown him what real wealth looked like. The priceless richness of human decency, the invaluable currency of choosing courage over safety. "What's your full name?" he asked gently, as if she were made of glass. "Sophia Reyes," she said, confusion flickering across her battered face. "Sophia Reyes," Marcus repeated reverently, as if committing it to sacred memory. "I will never forget that name or what you did tonight. Never." He pulled out his business card and wrote on the back with shaking hands. "When you're ready, when you've healed from this nightmare, call me. I need someone with your kind of courage. Desperately." If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. Sophia took the card with trembling fingers, reading his words through tears. "Heroes wear aprons, not capes. Thank you for showing me what actually matters." 6 months later, Marcus sat in his corner office on the 47th floor, watching the city sprawl beneath him like a living organism of dreams and desperation. The view remained unchanged, but his soul had been fundamentally reconstructed by one night in a restaurant and a waitress who chose heroism over survival. The kidnappers had been part of an elaborate conspiracy involving the restaurant manager and a former employee who'd sold intimate details of Marcus's routines for $50,000. They'd planned to drug him, stage a kidnapping, and extract a $100 million ransom from his board of directors. But they'd never anticipated Sophia's vigilance and sacrificial courage. A soft knock interrupted his reflection. "Mr. Thornwood, Sophia's here for the quarterly review," his assistant announced. Marcus smiled, remembering Sophia's terror during her first week as director of community safety. She'd worried about belonging in the corporate stratosphere, about whether someone from her background could possibly succeed. But Marcus had witnessed her true value that night in Bellissimo, and every subsequent day had validated his faith. Sophia entered wearing a sharp charcoal suit, but her eyes still held that same fierce determination that had saved his life. In her arms was a thick portfolio containing reports from their revolutionary initiative, a program providing security training and threat recognition for service industry workers nationwide. Born from her trauma, designed to prevent others from suffering what her brother endured. "The numbers are extraordinary," Sophia said, settling across from his desk with the confidence of someone who'd found their calling. "We've trained over 8,000 restaurant and hotel employees across 12 cities. 19 potential attacks prevented just this quarter because staff recognized the warning signs." Her voice carried pride that transcended any paycheck. Marcus leaned back, studying the woman who'd transformed his life by transforming her own. The terrified waitress had evolved into a passionate advocate, someone who'd discovered her purpose in protecting the vulnerable. "And the scholarship program?" he asked. 63 recipients this year," Sophia replied, her smile radiant enough to banish shadows. "All service workers pursuing careers in security, crisis intervention, or criminal justice. We're not just changing lives, Marcus. We're creating a network of people who refuse to look away." They discussed expansion plans and new partnerships for another hour. But as Sophia gathered her materials to leave, Marcus called her name. "Sophia, do you ever regret it? Leaving Bellissimo, taking this leap into the unknown." She paused at the doorway, silhouetted against the afternoon light. "Every choice has consequences," she said thoughtfully. "But some choices define who we become. That night, I decided I'd rather be someone who acts than someone who watches and regrets." She met his eyes. "Best decision I ever made." After she left, Marcus returned to his window. But now he saw more than concrete in commerce. He saw Sophia's program graduates working across the nation, protecting lives. He saw a web of people caring for strangers, acting instead of filming, choosing courage over complacency. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Sometimes the most valuable treasures aren't measured in bank accounts or stock portfolios, but in the moment we choose to help a stranger in need, and in doing so, save our own souls. Thank you for joining us on this journey of courage, sacrifice, and the unexpected connections that remind us what it truly means to be wealthy.